I spent a week in quarantine and fortunately experienced only mild symptoms. I think that's because I was fully vaccinated and boosted, and I was glad to have the help of modern science on my side. Well, there's never a good time to be away from our work here in the Senate, but we all have a responsibility to keep those around us safe as well, no matter how inconvenient. Unfortunately, there are reports that our friends across the aisle.
Senate Democrats are walking on eggshells around Kirsten Sinema. They are crossing their fingers that she will agree to support a sweeping tax reform and climate bill, and the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Manchin announced this weekend. Sinema was left out of the state's negotiations between Manchin and Schumer, though she played a large role in crafting the prescription reform bill that will be included in a budget reconciliation package, along with the tax and climate provisions. The good news is that Sinema has already expressed her support for setting a 15% corporate minimum tax for companies that earn more than $1 billion of profits, a centerpiece for the deal that will raise $313 billion. However, the question is whether she'll come to the agreement on the carried interest tax loophole that allows managers to pay only a 20% capital gains tax rate on income earned from managing profitable investments. Closing the loophole will raise an estimated $14 billion over 10 years. Sinema last year opposed changing it. A Democratic senator who attended the session noted that it is not unusual for Sinema to miss caucus meetings. A spokesperson for Sinema said that she's reviewing the text and will need to see what comes out of the parliamentarian process. Sinema has already left a mark on the bill by saying early during last year's negotiations that she would not support raising marginal tax rates for individuals or raising the corporate tax rate above its current level of 21%. Another key measure of inflation set a fresh 40-year high in June, a month marked by record high gas prices. The Personal Consumer Expenditures Price Index, which measures the change in the prices of goods and services purchased by consumers, rose by 6.8% in June, as compared to the same period last year. According to data released by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, that surpasses the 40-year high of 6.6% in March of this year and falls just shy of the 6.9% year-over-year rate noticed in January 1982. Understandably, consumers are not feeling that great about the economy right now, especially the high rate of inflation. As index of consumer sentiment during July measured 51%, that settles in above the all-time low of 50 that was set in June. Consumers in July that were surveyed expect that median inflation will land at 5.2% during next year and around 2.9% in the next 5 years. Schumer and Manchin's new bill is currently known as the Inflation Reduction Act, and White House economic advisors said the deal brings huge opportunities for investment to the economy.
Check. Green New Deal climate policies that would hurt our energy security and drive energy costs through the roof. Taxpayer subsidies for wealthy people buying expensive cars and SUVs. I was listening to the Majority Whip, the senator from Illinois, talking about these businesses that are making too much money, and so they need to pay more in taxes. Now that's what I've come to.
Good news, Congress is passing a brand new bill this week. Lawmakers have announced a new plan that will provide hundreds of thousands of Americans with up to $630 in extra financial aid. Now, there are a few requirements in order to be eligible for this new stimulus money. If you want to claim the stimulus check, then be sure to watch until the end of the video. So here is some big news. Hundreds of thousands of families in Pennsylvania could receive the $630 in state child tax care credits after Governor Tom Wolf revealed the details of the Child Independent Care Enhancement Program. As inflation continues on the rise, so does food and gas and other primary expenses for families all over the state. The Pennsylvania plan will help those working families who pay for daycare and are already qualifying for the federal program as well. They'll be able to claim this credit under 2023 tax filing. To be eligible, a household must earn below the $43,000 threshold, so they can get a $350 payment for a child or $630 for one if they have two or more children. The budget was approved earlier this month by the Pennsylvania Senate. Over 200,000 families will see the benefit of the Child Tax Credit Program. In a release, the governor said that cost should never be a barrier for parents looking for an educational, safe, supportive, and fun environment for their children while they work at each day. Now the IRS gets another shot at long-term investments in its taxpayer services. The budget reconciliation package announced this week by Chuck Schumer and Manchin will give the IRS $80 billion over the next 10 years. Schumer said on Wednesday that he expects the Senate to vote on the budget reconciliation bill next week, and the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act would help shrink a growing tax gap between what taxpayers owe and what the agency collects. IRS Commissioner Chuck Reddick told Congress last year the tax gap may be as high as $1 trillion a year, and the package gives the Postal Service $3 billion in funding for the EV vehicles and charging infrastructure. The Biden administration and Democrats first included these spending proposals in the Build Back Better Act, but Manchin eventually rejected the deal early this year. His role in drafting a similar, less expensive package improves his chances of passing the Senate. President Biden said today that the bill has a lot of similarities compared to the Build Back Better Act. Biden stated, "It's not all of it, but we're moved in a long way. With this legislation, we're facing up to some of our biggest problems, and we're taking a giant step forward as a nation." The IRS would have until September 30th, 2031 to spend the money. The IRS received $45 billion towards its enforcement operations, and $25 billion will go toward operation support. Another $4.75 billion will go towards a 6-year modernization effort. Once the spending bill passes, the IRS will have access to the multi-year funds. It says that we are needed to make more progress on modernization goals. More than $3 billion will go toward taxpayer services, and the bill will give the IRS $15 million to prepare for and deliver to Congress a report on the cost of developing and running a free direct e-file tax return system.
Democrats also want a huge new tax hike on American natural gas. Natural gas is the single largest source of electricity generation for our entire country. A plurality of all the power in America comes from, you guessed it, natural gas. It's also how countless families heat their homes. And it's the linchpin of our domestic energy independence and our ability to export to our allies in Europe. But the Green New Deal Democrats are coming straight after American natural gas with huge new tax hikes. The result will be higher electricity bills, higher heating costs, less exporting to our European allies, just as Putin is trying to cut them off, and 90,000 workers in the oil and gas industry, listen to this, out of work. Eliminating 90,000 workers in the oil and gas industry in the process. Democrats' tax hikes on American energy don't stop there. With gas prices still sky high, our colleagues are also proposing to resurrect a defunct tax that would take direct aim at American oil refining. And they want it pegged to inflation. So the tax hike will automatically climb up and up exactly when the country can least afford it. So on top of all this, the Democrats also want to pour new funding into the IRS so they can more easily come after small businesses. IRS agents get new cars, new computers. Small businesses, they get more audits. Add it all up, these tax hikes and others, and Democrats want to drop an anvil on our economy at the worst possible time. The nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation has demonstrated the Democrats' plan would shatter President Biden's promise